Okay, let's dive right in. We are on the very edge of what could be a massive conflict. There's this incredibly fragile peace between the US and Iran, and it is hanging by a thread. The whole world is watching, so let's break down what is actually going on here. And right away, this is the view from Tehran. It's completely defiant. They're essentially saying, hey, the US is losing, they don't get to call the shots. You know, this one quote really tells you everything you need to know about the deep, deep mistrust at the absolute heart of this crisis. So that brings us to the big question, right? The one we're going to try to unpack here. Is this pause, this ceasefire, a real, genuine step towards peace? Or is it just a strategic timeout where both sides are, getting ready for the next round? To get to the bottom of this, we're going to look at it in 5 key parts. First, we'll talk about the ceasefire itself, what's happening on the ground. Then we'll look at the view from Washington and then flip it to see the view from Tehran. After that, we'll check out Pakistan's kind of surprising role as a peacemaker. And finally, we'll talk about the high stakes and what this means for the rest of the world. All right, first up, the ceasefire. Now, this was brokered by Pakistan, but it was almost immediately put to the test by some really provocative moves that could have just sent the whole thing spiraling. Now, check this out, because this is where it gets really interesting. So you have Pakistan's top leadership going to the US and asking for a ceasefire extension. President Trump agrees. But then, almost right away, Iranian forces seize 2 international ships in the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, that's a critical choke point for the world's oil supply. You'd think that'd be it, right? The flashpoint? But instead, the White House comes out and publicly says it doesn't consider this a violation. A really clear sign they're trying to keep the door for talks open, even just a crack. So what's Washington's game plan here? Well, their entire strategy really boils down to one thing: using massive economic leverage to force Iran to the table. And this statement pretty much lays out the White House's entire playbook. They believe the sanctions have absolutely crippled Iran's economy, so much so that Tehran has no choice but to eventually give in. It's all about negotiating from a position of overwhelming strength. So what is Washington actually demanding? Well, first off, Iran has to hand over all of its enriched uranium. That's the stuff that could be used for a nuclear weapon. The timeline for any talks? Well, that's up to President Trump, not some fixed deadline. And here's the kicker: that sea blockade, the thing causing all the economic pain, it's staying put. Okay, now let's flip the script and look at things from Tehran's perspective. And as you can probably guess, they are painting a very, very different picture. One of defiance, of strength, and they're not afraid to show off their military might. And this, right here, this perfectly sums up the deadlock. Iran is saying, we'll only talk about a real ceasefire if you lift the blockade. But for the US, the blockade is their main leverage. So they're completely stuck. They can't even agree on the first step to start talking. So publicly, Iran is pointing the finger right back at the US president. Pezeshkian is basically saying, how can we possibly negotiate when you're threatening us and choking our economy? It's a narrative that paints Iran as the victim here, just reacting to American aggression. And look, this isn't just talk. To prove their point, Iran literally rolled out its powerful Khorramshahr-4 ballistic missile for everyone to see. We're talking about a weapon that can travel 2,000 kilometers. The message couldn't be clearer: don't underestimate us. So with the 2 big players locked in this stare down, a third country has stepped right into the middle. And kind of surprisingly, it's Pakistan, taking on this central role as a mediator. And Pakistan has played this very, very carefully. Their leadership went straight to the US to get this temporary peace deal, and it's earned them a lot of credit on the world stage. You've got major powers like the UK publicly giving them props for trying to get Washington and Tehran to the table. Now, it's really important to understand this is not just some regional spat. The economic shockwaves from this whole standoff are being felt all over the world by countries thousands of miles away. Let's just talk about the numbers for a second, because they are staggering. For Iran, the US sea blockade is costing them an estimated $500 million every single day. That's what maximum pressure looks like. But it's not just Iran feeling the pain. Not by a long shot. The instability is hammering energy prices, and it's costing Europe an estimated $600 million a day. So you can see why so many other countries are getting really nervous. And that nervousness leads to this. Pretty much the entire world is on the same page. From China to the UK to the UN, all the major powers are pushing for one thing, and one thing only: a diplomatic, peaceful solution. And what's really fascinating is that even while military planners from over 30 countries are meeting in London, their hands are tied. The condition is crystal clear: any military action can only happen after a lasting peace deal is in place. So even the military guys are saying diplomacy has to come first. So what's the big takeaway from all of this? Well, it seems to be that diplomacy is the path everyone wants to take. But man, is it fighting an uphill battle against years of mistrust and just this crushing economic pressure.
And in the end, this entire high-stakes situation all comes down to this one simple, unanswered question. A fragile peace is holding, the world is holding its breath, and we're all just waiting to see who is going to blink first.